It is 2 a.m. in New York, 7 in London, and 4 in the afternoon on the first Friday of 2014. I'm Moon Geun-hye. This is ARIRANG, Korea's only global network. President Park Geun-hye will hold a news conference with foreign and domestic press next week to outline her administration's policy plans for the new year. Now, Chief Presidential Press Secretary Lee Jyung-hyun told reporters earlier this Friday that the president's first press conference since taking office will take place at the presidential office of Cheong Wa Dae at 10 a.m. on Monday. Lee said the press conference will be broadcast on national television and attended by Prime Minister Chung Hong-won and some members of the cabinet. Now, we're entering the new year, and with it, we're seeing efforts by the leaderships of both Koreas to improve their strained relations. The softer and friendlier tone between the two sides has raised hopes for dialogue, but South Korean ministers and North Korea experts have warned against feeling too optimistic just yet. Our Han Da-eun has more.
North Korea's agency in charge of inter-Korean relations has pledged to open up a new phase towards the reunification of the two Koreas in 2014. In an interview posted on the North's propaganda website 우리 민족끼리 on Thursday, officials from the Committee for the Peaceful Reunification of the Fatherland called for pragmatic efforts to improve inter-Korean ties. This comes a day after North Korean leader Kim Jonguns sent a conciliatory message to the South through his New Year's address. On the same day, President Park Geun-hye said she will make greater efforts in 2014 to realize peace on the Korean peninsula during a phone conversation with UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. Against this backdrop, hopes are rising the two Koreas could relaunch stalled talks soon. Some say Pyongyang will likely propose talks on family reunions for those separated since the Korean War sometime around Lunar New Year at the end of January. But many experts are warning against being too optimistic. They say Pyongyang's conciliatory message is likely part of a carefully calculated move to get leeway for further provocations if needed, as well as to calm any internal instability. Seoul's Unification Ministry is also refusing to read too much into the messages. In a statement released Friday, the ministry said it remained skeptical as Pyongyang forged ahead with a nuclear test and other provocations in 2013 after pledging to take a path of reconciliation in its New Year's address last year.
We can help, but have doubts about the sincerity of North Korea's New Year's address.
The ministry reiterated it was North Korea that worsened inter-Korean ties. The statement also urged Pyongyang to first take sincere steps, including towards denuclearization, before discussing improvement of ties between the two Koreas. Ministry spokesman Kim Ui-do told reporters there has been mixed analysis on the recent cordial message from Pyongyang, but the ministry believes North Korea has not shown it has changed its previous stance. South Korean government officials say, however, that they have not completely ruled out the possibility of inter-Korean dialogue sometime in the near future. Han Da-eun, ARIRANG News.
Well, the substance of North Korean leader Kim Jonguns' New Year's address caught many off guard with its rather conciliatory tone towards the South. The confident style in which the young leader delivered the speech has also been noted by experts. Our Connie Kim has the details.
This is a footage of Kim Jong-un making his New Year's address. The way he moves is no different from last year, but his facial expressions have softened up much more.
우리는 주체형의 성스러운 진군길에 뚜렷한 자옥을 아로새긴 일과 인민들은 우리 당을 끝없이 신뢰하고 따르면서.
A sound expert has also analyzed his tone of voice. The expert says his voice has a higher tone now and his pronunciation has become clearer. In addition, Kim's sound variation, which usually reflects tolerance level, has expanded notably. This suggests Kim has grown more confident over the past 12 months.
Listening to Kim's 2014 New Year's address, the voice factor shows tolerance has increased by up to 50% from last year. Also, noting that a person's voice becomes very clear when confident, Kim's confidence level has jumped by up to 60%.
The change in Kim Jong-un's voice tone is noteworthy. From following a middle-aged man's low voice tone, Kim has found his own tone that better suits his young age. The similarity between Kim Jong-un and his grandfather Kim Il-sung's voice has decreased from 92% to 80% in the space of a year. Experts believe Kim Jong-un used to mimic his grandfather's voice to evoke nostalgia for the Kim Il-sung era. However, it wasn't just Kim Jong-un's facial expressions and voice tone that changed over the past year. There is speculation his health may have worsened as Kim took deep breaths every 4 seconds during his New Year's address. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
The United States says the main focus of its North Korea policy in the new year will continue to be the denuclearization of the North Korean regime. At a press briefing Thursday, U.S. State Department spokesperson Marie Harf said Washington will continue to make decisions based upon Pyongyang's actions, not its words. Harf declined to analyze North Korean leader Kim Jonguns' New Year's message, but did say the U.S. is constantly consulting with China on the issue. Now, as for Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's recent visit to the Yasukuni Shrine honoring war criminals, Harf said Washington has been urging Tokyo to solve historical issues with its neighbors in an amicable manner. Now, South Korea's Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se is scheduled to meet with U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry in Washington next week to discuss the diplomatic situations in Northeast Asia. The Korean government plans to front-load 65% of its annual budget in the first half of the year to ensure the economic recovery stays firmly on track over the next few months. The decision was approved Friday during a cabinet meeting led by Prime Minister Chung Hong-won. Now, under the plan, the government will set aside 40% of its fiscal spending for this year in the first quarter and another 25% in the April to June period. Officials say funds will be funneled into projects which are easy to carry out and benefit the regular people, like measures to boost jobs. Well, concerns about the state of the Chinese economy and its massive manufacturing sector in particular cast a long shadow over global markets in the first trading session of the new year. Shin Se-min has the details.
Stock markets around the globe started the new year on a weak note after China released a poor indicator pointing to a slowdown in its economy. Many U.S. shares plunged on the first trading day of 2014, with the Dow Jones Industrial Average closing 0.6% lower and the S&P falling 0.7%. The falls were partly due to profit-taking after a record-breaking run in the past year, but analysts said concerns over the world's second-largest economy set the mood in the stock market. The U.S. market opened hours after Beijing released China's Purchasing Managers Index for the manufacturing sector for December, which declined to 51 points from November's 51.4%. That's still above the 50-point mark, which separates expansion from contraction in the sector, but analysts said the drop in the indicator suggests the momentum of growth peaked in China and the economy would decelerate. Over in Europe, share prices also fell on the first trading day. In London, the FTSE 100 index fell 0.5% and Germany's DAX 30 fell 1.6%. In Korea, the Kospi closed 2% lower on Thursday. The story was similar in the oil market, with the benchmark Dubai crude closing at $96.41 per barrel. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
And Korean shares closed at their lowest level in 4 months on Friday as fears of weaker corporate earnings prompted foreign investors to offload market heavyweights such as Samsung Electronics. At the closing bell, the benchmark Kospi finished down 1.1% at 1946, its lowest close since September 4th, and below the very important 1950 mark. The Kospi also underperformed regional markets in the holiday-shortened week, falling 2.8%. The Tech-heavy Kosdaq rose 0.6%, while on the foreign exchange counter, the Korean currency closed weaker against the greenback at roughly 1,055 won. So let's take a closer look at the plummeting stock market. We have Dr. Kim Byoungjoo, head of KLMP Consulting and a regular commentator on this program, joining me live in the studio. Good afternoon to you, Dr. Kim.
Good afternoon.
Now, as we just saw, Korea's financial markets have been quite in turmoil in the first two trading sessions of the new year. Now, how much of this should we be concerned?
Well, the thing is, we have gotten used to the overall disappointments over the last year period about Korea's stocks, but this time the drops today and yesterday seem quite unusual, adding to all these unusual things we've seen last year. Indeed, the fall itself was quite steep, as you just mentioned. Today's fall was the low. Today's fall marked the lowest point since September 4th, and this 1950 mark itself was a very important one in the minds of Korean stock investors here, and that being broken itself was a big deal. Yesterday, in addition to this, we already had a big shock, in a way, over 2% drop in Kospi index yesterday, and also fast rise of the Korean won, and overall, at all fronts, even including the bond market, the surprises were everywhere pretty much. So we were pretty much all kind of surprised. That's because partly at the end of last year, government actually offered a forecast that seemed to be quite rosy and positive in terms of a coming year, and this financial market reacting this way is something that not many people had expected. So indeed, a lot of people seem to be quite concerned what this actually means.
Now, as our Shin Se-min just reported, yesterday's overseas market market moves were quite unsettling, to say the least. Now, I'm sure that has something to do with the way the Korean market moved today.
Absolutely, absolutely. Early this morning, we were all concerned about what's going to happen in Korea's stock market because of what was happening yesterday all around the world, particularly in the United States market and the European market. As Shin Se-min reported with all these numbers, the drop on the first day of trading actually was for the first time in 6 years for Dow Industrial Index itself. So that was a very rare thing. And these were all happening in addition to what Shin Se-min has reported. She talked about the China factor, but also Apple's overall stock valuation itself was a big issue. Just like Samsung stock valuation is a big issue here in Korea. In New York, Apple was a big deal, and there were a lot of downgrading of the overall outlook for Apple stocks in New York stock market, and that drove the overall indices down for sure. And also, in addition to that, the job numbers that actually turned out to be more positive than anyone had expected actually had a interesting effect on the overall outlook for tapering itself, QE tapering. When job numbers were surprisingly good, investors did not react to it positively. They rather thought, okay, that actually would mean further escalation of the overall pace of the QE tapering itself. So they reacted negatively to that positive indication. And also there were concerns about possible market correction as well because U.S. stock rose so much last year. There were some thinking about, when is the time to get off this upward cycle itself. So all those market psychology mixed together with all these good numbers being reacted negatively by the investors caused all these concerns yesterday in New York.
And as for the local bourse here in Korea, the foreign exchange rate, the currency seems to be a critical factor as well.
Right, indeed. Usually what happens is when foreigners sell their stocks, usually the valuation of won should drop because they seek to buy dollars in return. But that didn't happen yesterday. And overall, Korean valuations were rising overall, and that actually acted to the negatively affected the market itself because of the concerns for exporters. So that's on yen, won front, Korea's won, and then yen. Continuing devaluation of yen itself has further added concerns about Korea's exporters, and we saw some of the important marks being broken in terms of yen's depreciation as opposed to Korea's won as well as dollar. So that was a big concern. And also appreciation of yuan, Chinese yuan also added some concerns because when yuan goes up, that actually pushes Korea's won's value further up.
Right. Let's try to look beyond this currency now. How serious is, as Shin Se-min reported, the China factor in terms of their manufacturing outlook for one, and also here at home, what about the situation with Samsung Electronics?
To begin with the China factor first, it was quite interesting. I mean, I just talked about the appreciation of yuan, which means actually people see something positive ahead for China. But this latest number on the manufacturer's procurement itself was a negative one, and market kind of reacted to it quite negatively. But the way I said, it's a very short-term thing in a way, and what's being reflected in the valuation of the currency itself is something that's more meaningful. So I don't think the manufacturing side indicator here would make a big difference in the long run, and we should actually keep our eyes on the long-term prospect, which seems to be positive on China. And talking about Samsung here, we were being reminded once again how important in terms of relative weight the Samsung shares in Korean stock market itself is. And now, analysts are downgrading the prospect for Samsung Electronics because Samsung paid off big time in terms of their bonuses, performance bonuses at the end of the year. That will definitely affect the overall financial outlook for the fourth quarter last year. So that's why analysts were quickly downgrading the overall prospect for Samsung, and that affected Samsung's share valuation together with the impact from the strengthening won as well. So as Samsung's shares dropped, because its relative weight is so big, Korea stocks had to drop overall.
Now, and the market jitters or investors' jitters aren't only limited to the stock market, but also bond market as well.
Right. This is a big concern, at least in my mind here. We saw, foreign investors yesterday and perhaps today as well. I don't have the final numbers on the bond market today, but yesterday, foreign investors of Korean bonds were selling big time, especially Korea's treasury bond. And that's not a very good thing here because as they do so, the overall interest rate of these bonds will go up. We were expecting all along that interest rate in Korea will have to go up in response to the what's happening in the United States, the QE tapering itself. But seeing these rates going up this fast and that much is not something good because at this particular point of time here in Korea, we need stability in interest rates because the Korean corporations and companies are just begin to seeing this upward curve here. But when the interest rates start going up, at this early stage, it's not really good for the Korean economy as a whole. So what I was seeing in bond market yesterday was a little bit more concerning than what I was seeing in the stock side.
Now, Bank of Korea Governor Kim Jonguns just a few hours earlier said that when it is needed, the government is ready to, or the Bank of Korea is ready to take any kind of measures.
Right.
Could you elaborate on that?
Well, I think he was talking about possible rise of the interest rate itself. I still need to take a look into for the details, but I think he was talking about overall situation before what we were seeing yesterday in the stock market and today. So he might change his mind about that.
All right, Dr. Kim Byoungjoo, thank you so much for today and all of this week, and we'll see you on Monday.
Okay.
With rapid changes in the global economy, up-to-date business and financial news has never been more essential. See what's making markets tick around the globe. We speak to the experts and cover the biggest financial stories.
North Korea provocation.
Quite good. We received a lot of positive feedback, especially from those abroad.
Protesters are growing more vocal about the case of a teenage girl in India who was gang raped on 2 separate occasions last year. The girl died on the last day of 2013, almost 1 year after a similarly gruesome case in Delhi highlighted India's sexual violence problem. Our Kwon Jo-hwa has this report.
The new year in India began with national outrage over the death of a 16-year-old girl who was gang raped twice in October last year and reportedly lit herself on fire in December. The girl, who cannot be named for legal reasons, was gang raped on October 25th in Kolkata and again on the next day by the same group of men after filing a complaint with the police. On December 23rd, the teenager was hospitalized with around half of her body burned, and the media reported she had set herself on fire. While she was being treated, her doctors discovered she was pregnant. A few days later, however, she was said to have told police just before dying that 2 men set her on fire when she was home alone. Her family emphasizes that she did not commit suicide and that police tried to cremate the body as fast as possible in an apparent attempt to get rid of evidence. Indian activists are demonstrating against the government's handling of the situation. I would like to stress that the government is responsible for the girl who would have been present amongst us today if the West Bengal administration had properly carried out the law. We do not seek anything else. But where is the law? A girl was gang raped twice and still you're unable to punish the accused. Why?
The victim's father says he will demand the death penalty for the two men accused of his daughter's murder. The issue of violence against women in India grabbed national and international attention just over a year ago after a 23-year-old woman was brutally raped on a bus in New Delhi in December of 2012. 4 of the 5 rapists in that case are now facing the death penalty. Since that incident, the government has introduced new laws against sexual violence, but the latest case has renewed criticism against the government for failing to protect women. Kwon So-ah, ARIRANG News.
Dozens were killed in a string of attacks in Iraq Thursday, in yet another sign extremist groups linked to al-Qaeda are making resurgence in the country. The United Nations also says that violence in Iraq in 2013 soared to levels not seen in years. Kim Byoungjoo reports.
A suicide bomber driving a car full of explosives killed at least 12 people and wounded 25 others in Iraq Thursday. The bomb went off outside a car showroom northeast of Baghdad. No group has claimed responsibility for the attack. Violence has intensified since April after the Shia-led government carried out a deadly crackdown on a Sunni protest camp. Tensions were further fueled during the past week following the arrest of a senior Sunni politician by authorities and after police dismantled a Sunni protest camp, killing at least 13. On Thursday, al-Qaeda militants took control of almost half of the cities of Ramadi and Fallujah in Anbar province, where heavy fighting has been raging since Monday. In a separate attack on the same day, a truck bombing claimed the lives of at least 19 people in a city north of Baghdad, as security forces and allied tribesmen clashed to put down an uprising by al-Qaeda-linked militants. In another attack that day, a minibus exploded, killing 4 and wounding 6 in Baghdad's Shab district. And earlier in the day, a roadside bomb exploded inside a street market, taking the lives of 4 people and injuring 11 others south of Baghdad. Earlier this week, the United Nations said over 7,800 Iraqi civilians were killed in violent attacks in 2013, the highest annual death toll in years. Kim Min-ji, ARIRANG News.
Now, customers swarmed the U.S. state of Colorado, which opened up for business as the first state to sell marijuana for recreational purposes. But if you're a Korean national, you may want to stay away because the Korean Association Against Drug Abuse says you can be charged with criminal offenses upon returning to your home country. In Korea, it's illegal to smoke marijuana, and users can face up to 30 years behind bars for the offense, even if it's legal to use the drug in the place in which it was used. Some studies have shown that marijuana is addictive and can pose health risks when used repeatedly for a long period of time. Now, on a different note, in sports, 22-year-old Ji So-yeon has become the first Korean female footballer to join England's Women's Super League as a member of Chelsea Ladies. Song Ji-sun reports.
Footballer Ji So-yeon is kicking off the year with a dream come true. Her agent Insport Korea announced Friday that the national team's unparalleled midfielder had agreed on a 2-year contract with Chelsea Ladies in England's Women's Super League. Although her salary has not been made public, the speculation is that she will be paid at the highest level in Chelsea Ladies' history. Chelsea has also offered housing, airfare to and from Korea, and English language classes. Known as the female Park Ji-sung after Korea's first Premier League player, the 22-year-old has scored 26 goals in 55 international matches and helped her team Aina Kobe Leonessa win back-to-back titles during her 3 years in Japan's L1 League.
Korean players are significantly underrated in the European field. I want to break that trend, and I know I can do it to pave the way for younger players.
Chelsea has been interested in recruiting Ji since last year, when Aina Kobe beat the London club in the finals of the International Women's Cup in December, when she also picked up her 3rd consecutive MVP award. Ji is set to depart for the UK in the coming days for a physical, the last step before she seals a deal. 송지선, 아리랑 뉴스.
And here now is a look at the weather conditions in your neck of the woods. That brings us to the end of this newscast, but stay tuned to ARIRANG. We have a lot more coming your way on Early Edition at 6.